Hello everyone, this is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was kidnapped as a child and trained to kill? A dark genius awakens, Naruto times Hinata times Sakura times Ino times Tenten times Tamari times Anko times Kurenai times Tsunade times Shizune times Makoto Uchiha times Mei Terumi times Conan Part 3. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. A vicious backhanded slap impacted against the left side of Akari's face. While the blow did sting, it was nothing compared to the sting to her pride. She was a fearsome warrior, a former member of the Kinkaku Force, an elite group of S-ranked ninja from Cloud that had managed to kill the second Hokage, but even she knew that it would be suicide to fight back. So she took the blow without retaliation, even though she dearly wanted to slit the throat of the man who had struck her. As she stood there, not moving, her attacker spoke in an even tone. Akari looked the man in the eye while thinking furiously. She knew that she would have to choose her words with care, they could possibly be her last. I had no idea who he was. He told me his name was Naruto Tanaka. I had no reason to not believe him. If I had known, or even suspected his real identity, I would have immediately informed Toshiro. I deeply apologize, I cannot excuse my failure. Silence filled her office as the man walked over to a chair and sat down. During the entire conversation, the man's face had been shrouded in shadow, leaving his identity a mystery. Discreetly using her peripheral vision, Akari took note of the 3 shinobi that guarded this man, just in case she needed to take action. Looking back at Akari, the man responded, "You're correct, you can't excuse failure. However, you are fortunate that Toshiro has argued against your termination with vigor. It appears that your joint service still means something to him. There are no more excuses though. You are now tasked with retrieving Naruto Uzumaki ne Namikaze and return him to the pit. He is to be captured alive and kept that way. You will not enter him in any more fights, but so long as he is alive, your failure to keep him will be overlooked. Failure to bring him back will result in your termination with extreme prejudice. You know how connected we are, there is no hiding from us. You're lucky enough to not have a time limit on your task. My employer only wants the Uzumaki brat before him alive. I will say, however, that the faster you bring the brat back, the more lenient your punishment will be. Do you understand? I understand. I won't fail you." A soft chuckle sounded from the man. "Be sure that you don't. Just in case you have forgotten who you are dealing with, here is a reminder." As he finished speaking, the door to Akari's office swung open and Toshiro Tanahashi was dropped unceremoniously on the ground. His body was covered in bruises and Akari could tell that several of his ribs had been broken. Akari shivered unconsciously. Toshiro was a former captain of the Kinkaku Force. At one point he was one of the strongest Jonin of the hidden Cloud Village, only behind the Raikage, Darui and B. To see a man of his caliber brought down so low was chilling, and Akari was violently reminded about the true power of her employers, even if she didn't know their real identity. The man and his bodyguards left her office and Akari quickly checked on her friend and former captain. Akari started standard medical jutsu and after a short while, Toshiro groaned and opened his right eye. The entire left side of his face was too badly bruised and puffed up to allow his left eye to open. "Toshiro, I probably shouldn't ask, but just exactly who is so angry with us? Who could bring an S rank like you to your knees so easily?" Toshiro tried to answer but stopped as he had to spit out some of his teeth. Starting again, he said in a croaky voice, "The one who wants Naruto is Shoma Nakamura, the daimyo of the land of Earth. The power he wields completely dwarfs ours. We have to catch Naruto. Shoma is known in our circles for his penchant for torture. You don't understand, we cannot hide from him, his power is absolute." "No, not that one, it's far too bright," Jiraiya said as Naruto stepped out of the booth with a full-length orange jumpsuit. "We are ninja and we do not parade around announcing our presence with our clothing." Naruto had known that the moment he had seen it on the rack of clothing, but he couldn't stop himself from at least trying it on. Sure, it was bright and attention-grabbing, but something about it had struck a chord with him and he couldn't resist it. Ducking back into the clothing store's booth, Naruto walked back out dressed in loose black pants and a dark blue, long-sleeved shirt. Try as he might, Naruto hadn't been able to tear himself away from orange completely, and it showed with a belt that had a thin, dark orange strip that was sandwiched by black. Naruto was glad that it was Jiraiya who had decided to take Naruto shopping to update his look. Just last week he had been subjected to shopping with Makoto and Eri and had been forced to walk all over the village for several hours. By the end of the day, Naruto's feet had been killing him and he was exhausted. Jiraiya was far more sensible. This was the first clothing store they had entered and it definitely looked to be the last. Jiraiya nodded in approval. Yes, that's a far better getup. I know I said it before, but with a new year you should have a new look. You know, taking a closer look, your attire reminds me of Minato, minus the orange of course. However, the orange doesn't clash, rather it seems to blend in almost like a tiger's stripes. Satisfied, Jiraiya paid for Naruto's new clothes and they both left the shop. Since neither really felt like calling it a day, however, the pair simply started walking without paying attention to where they were going. Before they knew it, they had arrived at the top of the Hokage monument and Jiraiya knew it was time to tell Naruto about his decision. Naruto, I remember what I said about being there for you and I meant it. You are my godson and I will always do what I can to ensure your happiness. Jiraiya paused and turned to look over the village. He was too afraid of Naruto's reaction to what he was about to say and was unable to look Naruto in the eye. However, you know that I am also a ninja. I have a large network of spies and informants who feed me information and none of them are comfortable coming here, which means that I have to go back out in the field. Now, remember that we have both signed the Toad summoning scroll. With that, you'll be able to contact me whenever you need. Just summon a toad, give it a message and it will be able to relay it to me when I next summon a toad. A short pause followed when Jiraiya finished speaking. Unable to handle the silence, Jiraiya turned to Naruto and was momentarily surprised to find himself locking eyes with his godson. It's okay, Jiraiya. You have been honest with me and that means more to me than you know. I noticed that you easily suffer from boredom. I guess that you would go back out in time. Don't worry. If I need you I will call. Crouching down so that he was eye level with Naruto, Jiraiya spoke again, I'm glad that you can see that, Naruto. The village may need me but you will always be my top priority. With both of them content to leave to conversation at that, they simply sat down atop the head of the fourth Hokage and watched the beautiful colors of the setting sun. The new year of the academy had started 3 months ago and Sakura Haruno was no closer to unraveling the mystery that was Naruto Uzumaki. 3 months of questions and subtle glances, but she hadn't managed to gain any information about him that he hadn't already shared with the class. Sure, he wasn't quite as cute as Sasuke, but there was something about Naruto that appealed to her. He had a strength that no one else in the class had. While Naruto did look scary, especially with his scars and eye patch, he was not only mysterious but polite as well. Although he was one of the quietest people in the class, Naruto was never short with anyone. This gave him a lot of points in Sakura's book. Sasuke mainly ignored the others, and even though Kiba wasn't quite was cute the other two, he was far too loud for her taste. Her desperation to find out more about the blonde enigma led her to sneak around the village following Naruto. She was often accompanied by Ino. They had managed to form a truce due to the simple fact that there were 2 boys who happened to be the subject of their affections. This meant that both could get a boyfriend and Sakura had been happy to have her best friend back. The only real thing she had learned about Naruto was that he was crazy about training. Every weekend he would head off to Training Ground 9 and train with a man Sakura had overheard to be Might Guy. He was often joined by Sasuke and generally the boys of Guy's team became more competitive when her crushes turned up to train. That white-haired man who always read Ika Ika in public was there as well, but Sakura never managed to summon the courage to go over and talk to them. This day proved to be no different as she watched Naruto and a boy who looked just like Might Guy spar while hidden behind a tree. Ino had to go home for her own clan's training, but Sakura didn't mind. This just meant that she had more time with both Sasuke and Naruto. As Naruto's spar ended with Naruto winning, Sakura turned her attention back to Sasuke. He was sparring with the other boy on Guy's team and it looked very close. The look of concentration on Sasuke's face was captivating and she was taken completely by surprise when someone tapped her on the shoulder. Jumping slightly, Sakura turned and saw Naruto standing behind her. A whirlwind of butterflies flew around in her stomach, but before she could say anything, Naruto started whispering. Sakura, I know you have been following me. I must ask you to stop, it is rather annoying. I'm sorry to say, but I have no interest in finding a girlfriend, at least at the moment. My only goal right now is to become strong enough to protect the people I care about from death. Maybe when I'm older I will change my mind, but for now, I won't. Sasuke ignores all the attention, but he is of the same mindset. We are both driven to become the best ninja we can possibly be. I'm sorry, it is not my intent to hurt you, but I think you should know this. I hope that if I didn't encourage you that maybe you would get over your crush in time, but I think it's time to tell you this. The butterflies in her stomach had turned into lead and Sakura felt her shoulders sag. Naruto has no interest in me. He doesn't want a girlfriend. As tears threatened to spill, Sakura turned and fled towards her home. Naruto watched Sakura go with mixed feelings. He had asked his mum about Sakura's behavior and discovered not only what a crush was, but that Sakura probably had feelings for him. He had meant what he said. He didn't want to hurt Sakura but didn't know how to handle the situation. He could have been like Sasuke and ignored her, but a childhood of conditioning to react with politeness in every situation stopped him. It was another 2 weeks before Makoto had told Naruto to tell Sakura the truth about the lack of his reciprocation for Sakura's affection. It was, apparently, the best way to handle things, and even if Sakura's feelings did get hurt, she would appreciate it in time. Sighing, Naruto returned to his training. I have to force Lee past his limits. I can sense that he has real strength, but he is hiding it. I can't get stronger unless I fight him at his best. Sakura was brooding. It had been a week since her talk with Naruto, but it may as well have been the end of the world. Her work in the academy had suffered and her marks had fallen, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered anymore. Sakura was currently walking down the market stalls when she accidentally bumped into a stranger. Oh, sorry, I wasn't watching where I was going. The person Sakura had bumped into turned around and Sakura was face to face with Makoto Uchiha. As Makoto smiled, she replied, "Oh, it's okay, accidents happen." Say, are you Sakura Haruno? Naruto said that you had pink hair. I'm Makoto. As Sakura shook Makoto's hand, a question burst forth from her lips before she could stop it. Do you know why Naruto doesn't like me? A kind expression graced Makoto's face as she answered. Sakura, it's not that he doesn't like you, it's just that Naruto's focused on different things right now. Naruto wants to become as strong as he possibly can so that he can protect his loved ones. I hope you don't mind my saying this, but your worth is not measured by how beautiful you are, nor by how handsome or important your future husband may be. Both of my boys have been forced to grow up faster than normal and they don't really pay much heed to the problems of ordinary kids. You should focus on yourself and enjoying life. There is plenty of time to look for love when you are older. You have a lot of potential, Sakura, and the only way is forward. Makoto knew all about Sakura. Naruto had talked about the girl at length while describing her annoying habits. While Makoto was happy that a girl was displaying an interest in her boy, she knew that wasn't enough to gain Naruto's attention. Makoto had seen her share of shallow civilian women who only cared about the popularity or prestige of their ninja husbands. If she could sway Sakura off that path while also helping her to become strong in her own right, Makoto would do just that. Sakura took Makoto's words to heart and she found a newfound determination. I will become so strong that both of them will be begging me to date them. Naruto had noticed the change in Sakura over the past fortnight. She diligently trained and her progress was impressive. Although the progress of someone as weak as she was would appear to be incredible to anyone else. Naruto wasn't sure what had sparked her change of heart, but he welcomed the change. Sakura no longer glanced at him throughout the day, something which Naruto hadn't failed to notice. He was, however, reluctant to comment on her advancement since he didn't know the extent of her newfound resolve. Naruto decided to adopt a wait-and-see policy when it came to his classmate. Casting his thoughts over the rest of his class, Naruto began thinking of the qualities that he liked most about them. Shikamaru was similar to Naruto. Both were very smart and quiet, but Shikamaru was quite lazy. The most effort Shikamaru would put in during class would be in shogi while versing Naruto. Although Naruto hadn't managed to beat the Nara, it was an excellent thinking exercise. Choji was usually in the company of Shikamaru but didn't really bother Naruto. Choji was a kind person and liked that Naruto didn't seem to care about his weight. They didn't really talk much but both knew that they were friends. Ino was similar to the old Sakura. She was always trying to get Naruto's attention. Naruto didn't really appreciate her efforts but he always remained polite. She was generally nice when she wasn't trying to get someone's attention though. Kiba was fun to be around even if he happened to be the loudest person in the room. Kiba had taken it upon himself to be Naruto's friend ever since his mother, Tsume, had told Kiba that his uncle, Koba, had died to protect Naruto. Since the Inuzuka clan valued loyalty and possessed a slight pack mentality, Kiba had introduced himself to Naruto on the first day and also proclaimed him as his rival. Hinata was quite nice to be around. She was quiet all the time but she seemed to be getting better as the year went by. Perhaps it was because Naruto spoke to her a lot and she was forced to either ignore him or answer. Naruto, after being told what a crush was, managed to figure out that Hinata also appeared to have feelings for him. Naruto didn't really know how to approach the situation. Even if he had only spoken a handful of words to him, Naruto decided that Shino was his friend. He was very similar to Muta, in personality and behavior. With his experiences in the pit, Naruto had developed a slight sense for the skill of someone and although Shino never showed off, he was definitely one of the strongest in the class. None of the other kids in class struck any kind chord with Naruto. If he got to pick, Naruto wanted Sasuke and Shino on his squad. Both were quiet but among the strongest in the class. With their different skill sets, all three could push each other to get stronger. Danzo sat in his underground office located in the root headquarters. He was mulling over the information that one of his agents had just told him. So, the young Hyuga genius hates his clan. How can I entice him to join? I will need to think of a way around his caged bird seal. It would be a waste of time to train him to an acceptable level only for him to get killed by Hiashi for desertion. Might Guy was standing to the side of the training ground, observing Naruto and Lee sparring yet again. Guy knew that Naruto had guessed that Lee was stronger than he was showing and Naruto was determined to push Lee over the limit and showcase his real skill. Guy respected Naruto's drive to improve himself. It was his most impressive trait. Talent without determination resulted in arrogance and intelligence without drive laziness, but Naruto was surprisingly modest. Part of it was the aptitude Naruto had for taijutsu, but it was largely due to the fact that Kato had used his last words to encourage his friend to become as strong as possible. A wistful look crossed Guy's face as he remembered the gruff man who had once been his best friend. Kato had been there for Guy during the period of mourning that resulted when Guy's father, Might Dai, sacrificed himself to protect his son. Although Kakashi was his eternal rival, Kato was the only person to ever best Guy in a push-up competition. Naruto didn't know it, but he had earned Guy's ceaseless gratitude for delivering Kato's final message. Naruto still wants Lee to show his talent, huh? Turning to face his left, Guy saw Kakashi standing there. Yes, Naruto won't rest until he gets to see something that Lee is hiding. Making up his mind, Guy raised his voice and called out, "Lee, take them off. I know what I said earlier, but this is an exception. Show Naruto the power of your youth." An excited smile plastered itself across Lee's face and he hurriedly sat down and pulled up his orange leg warmers. Naruto saw that Lee was wearing leg weights. Is this it? How much faster can he be? In terms of physical speed, Lee is faster than I am already. Lee held both sets of weights in his hands as he stood up and dropped them to the ground. A colossal thump sounded and a large dust cloud formed. Shock tore through Naruto. What the hell? How much weight was he wearing? Kurama didn't even bother trying to answer Naruto. He simply laughed and made sure to broadcast it to Naruto. As the sound of Kurama's amusement echoed throughout Naruto's head, a twitch of Lee's legs was the only warning Naruto got before Lee blurred out of sight. A slight sense of something appeared in his vision, but Naruto was unable to react in time and was punched square on his right arm. Naruto managed to stay on his feet, but the impact forced his feet to slide along the ground for several meters. Gritting his teeth, Naruto channeled more chakra into both of his eyes and focused. The fully matured Sharingan was able to follow Lee's movements, but Naruto's reflexes weren't fast enough to keep up. Knowing that Lee would be upon him again, Naruto began his heavenly rotation and the swirling chakra kept Lee at bay. As he kept up his defense, Naruto was thinking furiously. Can't keep up with his speed even though I can see where he is. How do I fight this? Wait, I'm fighting on his terms. I need to change the pattern. Lee is fast but can't use the body flicker. If I constantly use my flicker, I won't need to react to his strikes but try to predict where he will be next. I have to think 2 steps ahead. Once my Sharingan tells me Lee's next position, I have to guess where Lee will be next and use a flicker to catch him off guard. Deciding on his game plan, Naruto used a flicker and teleported to the space behind Lee. Lee reacted and blurred again, but the instant Naruto had landed, he used another flicker. The Sharingan told Naruto that Lee would move to a spot on his left, so Naruto guessed that Lee would take another step forward to strike him. Therefore, Naruto's second flicker moved him to the spot that his Sharingan told Naruto Lee would next occupy. As he did that, Lee would move forward and Naruto would be able to strike at Lee's back. While it was a good guess, Lee didn't move as predicted and appeared in the spot that would have been on Naruto's right before Naruto used his second flicker. The result was that in the span of about a second, Naruto used both of his flickers. Both boys had moved positions in response to the other and ended up punching each other in the face at the same time. As they both staggered back, they locked eyes. Both blurred out of sight again. What followed was essentially a high-paced game of tag. Both Lee and Naruto pushed themselves to go faster, but neither managed to gain an advantage. Lee figured out pretty quickly that Naruto was trying to predict his movements and started to move unpredictably. Naruto, in response, starting trying to flicker even faster while following his gut instincts and hoped that he would be able to hit the randomly moving Lee. After quite some time, Lee started to slow down. While his stamina was very high, it was nothing compared to the chakra reserves that Kurama boasted. Eventually Naruto managed to land a gentle fist hit on Lee's right leg and the fight was over. As both boys sat down, Lee panted for breath as Naruto nursed a headache that had been brought on by overuse of his eyes. Though normally a transplanted eye didn't cause headaches, it was the simple fact that Naruto's brain wasn't truly adapted to see the world like in all directions since he didn't have the Hyuga genes or body. Not to mention the difficulty of trying to focus on something that was too fast to see. With the sheer amount of information that his eyes fed him, Naruto knew that he needed more training to adapt his body better in the use of his eyes. As Naruto put his eye patch back on, clapping could be heard and Lee and Naruto looked over to see both Kakashi and Guy applauding their efforts. As the two men walked over, Kakashi looked at Naruto and said, "Naruto, your use of the body flicker is impressive. There are not many people willing to use it the way you do, but I am reminded of Shisui Uchiha. He was very talented and become renowned as Shisui of the body flicker. He managed to take the body flicker to a level that no one else had thought of, but I won't tell you how he did it. I will give you this hint, however, using the body flicker the way you do, you will never compare to Shisui's agility. Although there are faster people than Shisui, not many people could outmaneuver him. Think about it." Guy then spoke to Lee. "That was excellent, Lee. I think that is the first time you fought against a person who could match your speed. While Neji's reflexes enable him to react to your speed, this time you found yourself in a contest of swiftness. It was good thinking when you moved randomly to try and offset Naruto from predicting your movements. Both of you had a good match. I want you two to think over the spar and see if you can think of ways that you may have been able to end it sooner." With those final words, the training session was called to an end. Naruto headed back towards the Uchiha district. Makoto had said that she was preparing sushi for lunch. Kakashi Hatake was in a serious dilemma. He needed to make a decision, but he couldn't make up his mind. The gravity of the situation weighed on his shoulders and a feeling of gloom could be felt in the air. Looking around at the shelves surrounding him, one singular thought reverberated in his thoughts: I am truly terrible at choosing gifts. Naruto's 12th birthday was coming up and he still hadn't been able to pick a gift for his honorary nephew. I need to hurry up though. Makoto's secretly planned birthday party happens tomorrow. He was broken from his musing when a voice cut in. Still looking for a present, Kakashi? Wow, Kurenai was right, you do suck at this. A tinkling laugh could be heard as he turned around and saw Makoto standing there, laughing at his apparent lack of talent in gift giving. A hint of defensiveness entered Kakashi's voice as he responded, "Hey, it's not that easy shopping for a 12-year-old. I am completely out of my depth here. You have any ideas for me?" The right side of Makoto's mouth quirked upwards in thought. Well, Naruto is not your average kid, so don't bother picking something from here. She gestured around at the shelves which held an assortment of toys. Surely a prodigy of your intellect would have managed to figure that out at least. An amused sound could be heard before Kakashi replied, "Well, yeah, but when I was 12 I would have loved something from here. However, a recently promoted Jonin has an image to uphold. I can't help but compare myself a little to him." Makoto's face softened. She hadn't known that. Sure, she knew that Kakashi had had a rough childhood, what with being an orphan and finding the body of his father. However, she would have never guessed that young Kakashi wanted a simple toy. He was always so serious. In spite of the gravity of the conversation, Makoto filed that tidbit of information away, just in case she wanted to embarrass Kakashi. Kakashi had closed his visible eye in annoyance. Why had that slipped out? Sure, Inoichi had encouraged him to speak more about his past, but this was a little outside of his comfort zone. Curse that Yamanaka and his stupid therapy. Next thing you know, I'll be reciting poetry. Hoping that Makoto would let it go, Kakashi opened his eye again. He saw a soft expression on her face and he grimaced. Nope, no such luck there. Trying to salvage the conversation, Makoto spoke again. Well, Naruto doesn't really store much value in the material world. He values family and friends above everything else. Maybe that will help you make a decision. This kind of thing won't resonate with Naruto at all. She had picked up a wooden eagle as an example. Kakashi nodded. He had just had a brainwave and now knew what he was going to give Naruto. Thanks, Makoto, you just gave me a great idea. See ya tomorrow. Sasuke had spent a large part of the last hour looking for Naruto without success. Sasuke knew that his mum had organized a surprise party for Naruto and it was due to start soon. However, Naruto had woken up early and no one had seen him today. Sasuke was still unsure how he felt about Naruto. On one hand, Naruto never bothered him about Itachi or how it made Sasuke feel, and Sasuke really appreciated that. However, Naruto had also turned up and completely outclassed Sasuke in terms of strength. The fact that Naruto was now his friend only served to complicate matters. Sasuke didn't know how to deal with his feelings of jealousy. His musing was broken when he spied Naruto. He was standing before the war memorial stone and looked to be in deep thought. Naruto turned when he heard Sasuke's footsteps approaching. Morning. How's things? Though Naruto's voice sounded normal, Sasuke knew better. It was the exact same tone he used when he reassured people that he was fine. Good. Mum sent me to find you. Lunch almost ready. Nodding, Naruto turned back to the stone before replying, alright, just give me a minute. Following Naruto's gaze, Sasuke saw that Naruto was reading the names, Kushina Uzumaki, and Minato Namikaze. Understanding blazed in Sasuke's mind, but he didn't say anything. He didn't have to, and so the two boys stood side by side for several minutes as they both contemplated the past. Makoto's cheeks were sore from all the smiling she had been doing, but she couldn't help it. Naruto had no idea about the party and the look of shock on his face had been priceless. She was so happy that she had entrusted the camera to Hiyashi. She would never have been able to take the picture of Naruto's reaction because she had been laughing too much. The party was going well and Naruto was having fun. Although he maintained his stoic face, Makoto felt that she could generally read Naruto's mood fairly well, most of the time, and she knew that Naruto would treasure the memory of his first, real birthday party. Naruto started on his pile of gifts by opening Makoto's first. It was a handmade necklace. Woven with black, orange and yellow thread, and a small silver pendant dangled at the bottom. It had the Uzumaki whirlpool on one side and the Uchiha crest on the other. Makoto had made it with Eri, who was watching Naruto with big eyes. Naruto immediately put it on as Eri explained that the colors represented the hair of his parents. A slight smile was his only response, but Eri knew that it meant a lot to her big brother. Naruto next grabbed a plain old shoebox with one ribbon tied around it half-heartedly. As Kakashi announced that was his gift, Asuma punched him lightly on the arm. Really? A shoebox, Kakashi? You're better than that. What? He won't care about the box, just the present. That was such a typical Kakashi answer that Asuma punched him again. By this time Naruto had opened the box and pulled out a unique kunai. It had 3 prongs and a strange-looking seal was written on the handle. A handful of people gasped as they recognized what it was. That kunai was designed and used by your father Naruto. It allowed him to master the Flying Thunder God technique and it almost single-handedly won us the Third Shinobi War. Maybe you'll be able to unlock its secrets and surpass him. The emotion generated by the gift was really getting to Naruto. He was struggling to keep his composure but it was a real fight. A heartfelt, "Thank you," was all Kakashi got but everyone could see that it meant a great deal to Naruto. Still trying to come to terms with his happiness, Naruto opened his next present. It looked like it was clothing and Naruto pulled it out to reveal a green, spandex suit. In the box were some training weights and orange leg warmers. Naruto was looked down at the green monstrosity in his hands before Naruto looked up at Guy. Naruto looked back at the suit then back at Guy before whispering, thanks. Everyone laughed and the emotional atmosphere from before was forgotten. Sasuke entered the backyard leading Kiba and his mother Sume to the party. Kiba appeared to be holding Puppy and marched over to Naruto with gusto, Akamaru wobbling slightly on top of his head. Hey Naruto, how's it going? This little guy was born deaf in one ear so he can't be trained to be a nin dog. Mum seemed to think that you might like to have him. What do you think? Naruto lifted the small puppy to eye level. It was small but full of energy and eagerly tried to lick his face. He had soft black fur and bright blue eyes and always seemed to tilt his head to one side. Beside him, Eri was literally shaking in excitement and kept trying to take the puppy into her arms. Thanks Kiba and thank you Mrs. Inuzuka. This is a great gift. What should I call him? As random names were called out Eri stamped on Naruto's foot and as he hobbled in pain, she managed to pry the puppy away from Naruto. Plonking herself on the ground, she began to play with the puppy. Naruto's own suggestion of dog for a name was shot down instantly. Sasuke's idea of Ripper got some nods from his classmates before Sakura suggested the name Ramen, before smiling and asked if Naruto would be able to restrain himself from eating the poor puppy. Inspiration struck and Naruto looked at Sakura. Thanks Sakura, I picked a name. My dog's name will be Noodle. As the half-moon shone in the night sky, Akari turned to talk to Mako. The organization's infiltration expert was short and thin. He was no real fighter but Mako was able to sneak in anywhere. The fact that he had a truly unremarkable face that could be found anywhere only helped him. With no redeeming features, Mako's face would blend in the memories of anyone who happened to look at him. Mako, tell me again. You said the Uzumaki lives with the Uchiha, right? And go over the other details too. We can't afford to gloss over anything. That's right. My informant says that he currently lives in the house of the Uchiha clan head. It's unfortunate since the Uchiha district is on the other side of the village but of the people we have infiltrated into the Konoha barrier teams, only one is currently on duty and is stationed on the wall furthest away from the Uchiha district. So we have no choice but to enter the opening here and traverse the entire village and get back through the same hole. The longest he can keep this opening available is 15 minutes at the absolute maximum. We must be quick. Akari nodded. Nothing had changed since they had come up with the plan. Pulling up her skin-tight half-mask, she drew her short sword from the scabbard on her back with her right hand. Addressing her team of 6 shinobi, Akari said, "All right, you all know the plan. As sneakily as possible, get the Uzumaki brat and get out of here. If it all goes to plan, no one will notice our presence until we are long gone. Let's get this over with." Kurama was meditating inside his cage. It was a habit of his that was born out of boredom but it did help him organize his thoughts. Even though Kurama would have preferred to talk to Naruto, Kurama couldn't begrudge his host from the recent decline in their communication. Kurama knew it was petty but he was jealous. Jealous of the amount of time and focus Naruto was giving to other people when for the majority of Naruto's life, Kurama had been the only person Naruto could talk to. Naruto needs his new friends far more than me right now. He knows that I will be around. It's not like I'm going anywhere. Kurama's eyes flew open. He had detected a surge of malicious intent and it was extremely close. Kurama screamed at Naruto in the loudest voice he had ever used, "Naruto, wake up. An enemy is near." Naruto's eyes flew open and the first thing he saw was a hand with a strange seal cupped in its palm, descending towards his forehead. Instinct took over and Naruto rolled to his left while flaring out Kurama's chakra to drive off the unknown assailant to his right. Performing a kip up on his bed, Naruto spun to face his attacker. They wore a half mask to hide their identity, however, Kurama could sense real, harmful intent and told Naruto so. Naruto used a flicker to try and flank his opponent, but they managed to read his movements and deflected his gentle fist attack. Roaring in fury, Naruto began his assault. Using the refined movements that Guy had showed him, Naruto attacked with everything he had. The unknown attacker managed to avoid almost all damage, save for the single chakra point that Naruto managed to strike on their left forearm. In response to Naruto's furious roar, two different bedroom doors down the hallway flew open and Makoto and Sasuke rushed towards Naruto's room. A second enemy that Naruto had failed to notice engaged Makoto while Sasuke performed several hand signs to back up Naruto. A large fireball erupted from Sasuke's mouth and Naruto's attacker was forced to jump away from Naruto. In rapid response, Naruto's original attacker used the fastest body flicker Naruto had ever seen and performed a quick chop to the back of Sasuke's neck. Sasuke, somehow, managed to maintain consciousness but failed to stop himself from falling to the floor face first. Finding the strength to roll onto his back, Sasuke watched in horror as his attacker plunged a kunai down towards him. A sudden blur occurred and the next thing Sasuke knew, Naruto was standing above him, taking the kunai that was aimed at Sasuke's heart. Sasuke couldn't see where exactly Naruto had been stabbed as his blood splashed down on Sasuke's face. Before Sasuke was able to say anything, Naruto's entire body was engulfed in searing flame and he launched a fiery blast that was so hot that it burned blue. The unknown attacker managed to grab Naruto's wrist and direct the scorching flames towards the ceiling. Unbeknownst to everyone inside, the sudden light that resulted from Naruto's attack, which happened to demolish the house's roof and flare upwards for at least 20 feet, attracted a lot of attention. Akari cursed and sent another member of her party into the house in the hope that she could settle matters before they got out of hand. They couldn't afford to waste time, but she also needed to cover their backs. Atop the Hokage tower, the senior Anbu on guard told his subordinates to alert the Hokage to a security breach. Having done his duty, Tenzo summoned a wood clone to alert his friend Kakashi before rushing with all haste towards the Uchiha district. Naruto's attacker discovered the folly of grabbing someone who had covered themselves in wind-enhanced flames. As they let go, hand burning in pain, Naruto leapt forward and bear-hugged his assailant. Not caring about the chakra cost, Naruto had his body flare to the hottest temperature that he could manage. As a bright, white light encompassed Naruto's room, the attacker was disintegrated into ash. Naruto wasn't given any time to savor his victory as the man who Akari had sent in appeared and attacked him. Thanks to the combined visual prowess that was given to him, Naruto managed to use a body flicker to dodge the attack and appear behind his newest opponent. Launching a fierce barrage of fire-enhanced gentle strike attacks, Naruto gave his absolute best. Unfortunately for him, Naruto's attacker was skilled enough to evade his best attacks. With all of his focus upon the enemy in front of him, Naruto failed to react in time to another attacker who flickered into his room and slapped a chakra suppression seal to his forehead. The effect was immediate and it affected Kurama far more than it did Naruto. The seal was designed to cut off large amounts of chakra at the source and Kurama was the largest source to attack. As Kurama's strength left Naruto's limbs, Naruto felt an inexplicable trace of fear. For as long as he could remember, Naruto had managed to feel Kurama's presence even if it was on a subconscious level before his abduction. For the first time, Naruto's thoughts echoed in his mind and there was no comforting presence there. Kurama had been with Naruto in the pit, Kurama had always been there but now, Naruto couldn't feel him at all. A chill crept up his spine. Without Kurama's nature transformation, Naruto's body was simply covered with a thin, swirling gush of wind. Kurama's sealer quickly attacked Naruto alongside his comrade, and Naruto, unable to call on Kurama's chakra reserves or nature, Naruto quickly fell victim to his opponent's superior skill and was knocked unconscious. Kakashi had a habit of staying awake late. It was due to years of nightmares that he couldn't get rid of, and even though Kakashi had made large strides towards improvement, this was one habit that he was unable but totally willing to lose. Therefore, while caught completely off guard when Tenzo's wood clone informed him about events happening in the Uchiha district, Kakashi was able to adapt to the situation quite quickly. He summoned his nin dog Pakun and told him to inform Guy of the situation before leaving. When Kakashi arrived at the Uchiha district, he saw the limp body of Naruto being carried upon the shoulders of a masked assailant. The unknown man had just exited the front door of Makoto's house and looked ready to jump away. Using a flicker, Kakashi appeared next to Naruto's attacker with a lightning blade at the ready. Even as the now dead body dropped to the ground, Kakashi grabbed Naruto and stepped away from the body. The sound of shattering glass above Kakashi drew his gaze, and he saw Makoto get launched out of the second-floor window. She flipped in the air and landed on the ground a few meters away from Kakashi. Looking at Kakashi, Makoto said urgently, "Kakashi, get Naruto out of here. They're here for him. What about you and the kids? They don't have any interest in Sasuke or Eri. You need to get Naruto free though, not even you can fight this many people." Kakashi spared a glance down at Naruto and saw the suppression seal. He ripped it off before he was forced to return his attention to his surroundings. Kurama instantly felt the renewed connection to Naruto and used his chakra to wake up and heal his host. Kurama felt an odd relief, but it was tempered by the current situation. In the time it took for Kakashi to rip off the seal, more enemies flickered and surrounded both himself and Makoto. As Naruto came to, he wriggled out of Kakashi's grasp and took his fighting stance. Counting, Naruto saw that 6 shinobi remained. An uncontrollable anger took him suddenly as he recognized the foul taste of Akari's chakra. Naruto activated his scorch mode and turned, firing a burst of blue flame directly at Akari. She jumped away to avoid it as 3 enemies attacked Kakashi at the same time. Makoto would have helped, but she was hard-pressed as the last 2 fighters came at her. Kakashi was more focused than he had ever been, but knew that he was going to lose this fight. He just didn't have the space or time to fight 3 Jonin-level fighters. As an enemy's sword slipped through his guard, Kakashi heard Guy's voice shout out, "Dynamic entry." And his friend appeared, kicking away the man wielding the sword. As one of Kakashi's attackers turned to deal with Guy, he was suddenly impaled by thick, wooden spears. Tenzo had arrived. Leaving the remaining 2 to his friends, Kakashi turned to help Makoto, using a flicker and blocking a kick aimed for her ribs. Akari would have had no problem continuing the fight. She was confident in her skills, but she also knew that time was running out. Needing to create an opening, Akari launched multiple fire balls which struck the houses all around her. As they burned, Akari could hear the frantic cries for help coming from at least 2 of them. Lighting Makoto's house on fire, she called out for her men to retreat. Akari then used a body flicker to appear next to Makoto and ruthlessly stabbed her in the gut with her sword, kicking Kakashi away in the same movement. Her team rushed towards their exit as Guy and Tenzo both rushed to help the remaining Uchiha clan members out from their burning homes. Naruto gave chase, even angrier than before. He had seen his mum get stabbed, and right now the only thing he wanted to do was kill Akari. Flickering after her, Naruto felt more and more of Kurama's chakra surrounded him. Canceling his scorch mode, red chakra enveloped his body and 3 tails sprouted. He couldn't see it, but his whisker marks had become wild and exaggerated. Kurama's chakra cloak was extremely potent, it increased the speed and strength of his muscles. This cloak also enhanced his flicker, and Naruto used this to appear on the right of Akari as she tried to fall back atop the rooftops. Akari's reflexes kicked in and she deflected Naruto's fist with the flat of her sword. Taking a moment to gauge him, she noticed the swirling red chakra, and Akari was reminded of her former friend Killer Bee. Akari's eyes widened. This kid is a demon container. All this time and we didn't know. This explains so much, but capturing him now will be too difficult. I don't have the time to knock him out and get him back to the barrier before Konoha's Anbu get here. This was supposed to be a quick stealth mission, not a protracted battle. Akari knew that she could try and capture Naruto in the future, but that didn't mean that she couldn't have a little fun. Swinging her sword, she feinted with a swing from above before turning it into a stab. Naruto managed to see through this with his Sharingan but failed to see that it was a double feint. As he dodged to his right to avoid the sword, Akari cast a simple genjutsu on Naruto. Kurama was able to dispel it almost instantly, but that small window of opportunity was all Akari needed. She rapidly sliced Naruto multiple times all over his body before slicing Naruto's throat with her sword. As his hands flew up to his neck, Naruto coughed and choked. He needed air but couldn't get it. His blood ran fast through his fingers as he struggled to breath. Still a weakling, huh, brat? I can see that you want nothing more than to kill me, but you're far too weak to do anything about it. I wonder how Makoto is doing. How will you cope if she dies on you too? Akari laughed viciously as she bounded away, making a beeline for her escape. Naruto was left kneeling on a rooftop, staring after the object of his suffering even as he gasped for breath. After Kurama healed his neck, Naruto looked down at his blood-stained hands. She's right. All this training and she still walks all over me. I need to get stronger. Hiruzen Sarutobi was tired. It was 2 days after the attack and he had only managed to snag about 6 hours of sleep in that time. There was so much to do and he was needed by everyone. The hospital currently held 5 members of the Uchiha clan, including its head Makoto. The rest of the Uchiha had been relocated to a hastily constructed apartment complex, courtesy of Tenzo, which was right next to the Hokage Tower. This new building would help protect the remaining Uchiha members and also put Hiruzen's most loyal Anbu close by for security. The district would still belong to the Uchiha, but it didn't make sense for 16 people to reside in an entire compound, especially if they were now a target. I also needed to move all of them to protect Naruto. He wouldn't leave his family behind, but I have to keep him safe. Perhaps I should have an Anbu watch him from the shadows at all times. Looking at his desk, Hiruzen grimaced before sitting down and continued working on the mountain of paperwork that had appeared due to this recent incident. He worked in silence for 20 minutes before a knock sounded on his door. Telling them to enter, Hiruzen saw Inoichi step into his office. "Sir," Inoichi began, shutting the door behind him and moving in front of the desk. "I tried breaking into the mind of the man who was captured by Tenzo but met the strongest mental barriers I've ever seen. I cannot break them and he has a cursed seal on his tongue, similar to the ones that Danzo uses for root. We're out of options, sir. What should we do next?" Hiruzen ran his right hand over his face in frustration. It was probably a combination of sleep deprivation, stress and controlled anger that led him to this decision. "Get Naruto Uzumaki. He can break those barriers." Naruto gazed down at the man who was chained to his chair. They were currently in a bland room with the only furniture being the chair that was bolted to the floor. A single light bulb gave the only illumination and Naruto's hair shadowed his eyes. Although his face was plain, a great anger was bubbling inside him. Naruto had had a tough 2 days. Sasuke gave him space, but he was the only one who did so. Naruto had come to appreciate the fact that Sasuke and himself were not so different. We both know that a lot can be said in silence. I can't stand everyone asking me, "Are you okay?" Like I'm a child. Everyone else didn't seem to realize that Naruto just wanted to train to get stronger. He spent almost every minute of daylight training and most of the night sitting by Makoto's hospital bed with Sasuke, Eri and Noodle. His manic determination was noticed by everyone, but no one raised any issues. Guy simply did his best to streamline Naruto's gentle strike. Now though, Naruto had a small chance for retribution. The Hokage wanted Naruto to use Psylink and interrogate the man in front of him, and Naruto was happy to do it. This man helped Akari. Mum could have died and he helped Akari. I will make him understand how stupid he was to do that. Naruto allowed his emotions to swell, the anger flooding his veins, and with malicious intent, he activated Psylink. The man's mental fortitude was nothing compared to this ability, and for an instant, he saw a glimpse of Naruto's life. Suddenly pain rocked his entire being, and against his will, his memories flashed through his mind. Each one was painstakingly analyzed before it was torn from his mind. He had been trained to withstand pain and torture, but this was pain on a level that couldn't be comprehended. He watched his memories, his essence, flash in front of him before getting ripped away slowly and started to forget who he was. Naruto watched in morbid fascination. He had no idea that Psylink could work like this, but then again, he had never used it while this angry. He had never used it as an attack and the results were astonishing. The man was slowly losing the very things that made him who he was. Naruto could feel the man's newfound confusion as he no longer remembered the reason why he was being subjected to Psylink or even what his name was, but quivered in fear at the pain he now associated with the memories of someone he didn't know. After a time, Naruto ran out of memories to view. In the past, this would be where he would end Psylink, but this time he stayed his hand. There was one thing left in the man's mind. It wasn't a memory, it was a small ball of light. Naruto crushed it and the man shook in his chair before falling still, his face going slack. His mouth drooped open and he started to drool as he stared aimlessly at the floor. Ending the Psylink, an incredible backlash hit Naruto's mind. All the pain he had inflicted hit him at the same time. Thankfully, it only lasted for a second, but it was the worst thing he had ever endured. Immediately following the pain, a brief instant of exhilaration surged through him. It was the strangest sensation, but it did feel good even if it was only for an instant. Stepping back, Naruto saw the man slumped in his chair. Is he still a man? Or is he just a body with a heartbeat? Naruto left the interrogation room to deliver his report. He had a pounding headache, but it was worth it. Sure, the pain had been awful, but he had managed to do what the Hokage had wanted. Kurama was beside himself. He had suffered the same backlash as Naruto and it had been excruciating. Kurama, on some level, knew that Naruto didn't know that the backlash would happen, but it didn't stop Kurama from getting angry. Naruto was focused on his thoughts, putting together his report and failed to realize something, but Kurama did. Kurama hadn't been present to see the memories of the man, but he had been able to feel Naruto's emotions during Psylink. Naruto was busy getting his information, too busy to notice that after a while, he could have stopped. Naruto had gleaned everything of importance from the man, but Naruto didn't stop. He kept destroying the man's soul. It was almost as if Naruto suffered from a compulsion to tear every memory he saw apart, and Kurama feared what Naruto would do if he fed it. Okay Hiruzen, what's with the cryptic note? Asked Ryo Suzuki, daimyo of the Land of Fire. Ryo, I need to know what you can tell me about the attack we suffered last week. I have activated several different seals in this office to ensure our privacy. Ryo ran his chubby right hand through his long brown hair. Well, I don't know the identity of the people who actually attacked, but I can hazard a guess as to who ordered the attack. I would say that it's Shoma Nakamura, daimyo of the Land of Earth. Resting his hands on his rather obvious stomach, Ryo took a breath and continued, Shoma has a serious grudge with your fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. In the decisive battle in the Third Shinobi War, the one where Minato killed 1,000 enemies in an hour, Shoma lost his son, a cousin and a ninja who also happened to be his favorite concubine. Shoma is the one who fronted the majority of the bounty on Minato or any of his family. The rest was provided by the Hidden Stone Village. Shoma is ruthless. He has allowed the power of his position to go to his head and he does what he wants, when he wants. The only reason the people do not live in fear of him is that his private ninja abduct random people from other areas as his victims. The one redeeming feature about him is that he never lies, he considers it beneath him. You cannot go against Shoma. He fields the largest number of samurais of all the daimyo, not to mention that he has a large percentage of the stone's explosion corp in his pocket. There was a pregnant pause. Hiruzen now had a name responsible for the damage to his village, but there was nothing he could do about it. It was infuriating. Looking Ryo in the eye, Hiruzen asked, if I made a move against the stone, would you sanction it? After all, they attacked our country, are we to just abide foreign enemies attacking his with impunity? Ryo sighed and fiddled with his robes. Hiruzen, the peace we have is standing on the edge of a knife. Even though I do not participate in the baser aspects of the Daimyo Council, I am a part of it. We manipulate and pull so many strings across the land. Shoma is currently the only daimyo who is ready for war. Wind's daimyo, Jin Nishiyama, is very frugal. War would force him to spend money he works so hard to hoard. He also might not be able to count on his hidden village's support after outsourcing so many ninja missions here instead. None of us have heard from Mist in several months. We are almost certain that an S-ranked missing nin called Kisame Hoshigaki assassinated the daimyo. Until the civil war in the Mist is resolved, none of us will step in to help choose the next daimyo. Lightning's daimyo, Manabu Shingen, is very aggressive and would wage war easily. However, he would wait for someone else to attack first. He is a wild card and I cannot predict who he would side with if we went to war. Hiruzen sat back in his chair. It was a lot of information to process, but Reo wasn't finished. Hiruzen continued listening as he took a quick sip of coffee. What I am trying to say is, the daimyo operate in secret to maintain peace while also serving our self-interests. For Shoma and Manabu, they covertly took control of the black market to help control valuable materials from getting into other people's hands. If a few people happen to disappear for their personal entertainment, no one bats an eye. Jin and I used our resources to corner the criminal underworld. By plucking missing nin up and employing them, we stabilize peace by ensuring that the truly dangerous are not set loose on innocent people. That Akatsuki managed to grab hold of so many S ranks offends my pride. I have several of my best people searching around for information on them. Although I personally have nothing to do with the pit, I know of its existence. I also knew about Naruto's whereabouts this entire time. Now, Reo held his hand up to stop Hiruzen from speaking in anger. Hiruzen shut his mouth, but his eyes were burning. Now I know this annoys you, but you have to understand, I couldn't risk you doing something rash and jeopardizing our country for one boy. It is a cardinal rule that we daimyo operate in secret, and should any information get leaked to the public, the guilty party would be utterly crushed by the other daimyos. One boy cannot come before my people, Hiruzen, not even my own son. I'm not perfect. I am guilty of many sins, but everything I do it to help the land of fire. Know this, if you try to go to war, I will step in and stop you before it even gets past our border. The largest reason we have managed to keep the peace, however, is manipulating the ninja villages into believing they wield the world's power. By feeding the egos of the five kage, we ensure that none are tempted to aspire to greater levels of power. Hiruzen was angry but also felt his anger fading slowly. He didn't like it, but Reo was right. It also answered many questions, including whether or not Reo would support him. Hiruzen would have to get his revenge on Shoma Nakamura alone. Naruto was standing in a clear training ground, puzzling over the words that Kakashi had said to him about the body flicker jutsu. How do I use it like Shisui? Kakashi said if I kept using it the way I did, I would never get it. Does that mean I have to look at the basics and change something? Thinking about the way to perform a flicker, Naruto channeled then compressed chakra into his feet before flickering away to a spot several meters away. An idea popped into Naruto's head and he excitedly tried it out. Jiraiya had said that you had to compress chakra into both feet, but did you? Using only one foot, Naruto performed another flicker. It was a little slower than if he had used both feet, but Naruto chalked that up to using less overall chakra. Forcing himself to go slowly and get things right, Naruto then alternated using both feet separately for flickers. Although single foot flickers were slower, the interval between flickers was a lot shorter, which meant that overall, Naruto was far faster than if he used both feet. The biggest problem Naruto found was that it was quite hard to keep track of where he wanted to go, as well as the correct amount of chakra needed. Sure, Kurama had enormous reserves, but there was no sense in being wasteful. But what if I didn't waste any? Can I continually compress chakra into separate feet? This would mean that every step I take is a flicker, but I would only have to worry about the location and not worry about chakra management. I'd be almost uncatchable, but I would also have to do a lot of reflex training. After an hour of experimentation, Naruto discovered that while he couldn't continually compress chakra, Kurama could. Though Kurama couldn't send the compressed chakra to Naruto's feet, he was able to give it to Naruto to control. From there, it was a simply matter to channel it to his feet before using it as a flicker. This wasn't quite as fast as Naruto had initially wanted, but his speed was already far higher than before, so he wasn't that fussed. It just gave him something else to perfect. It also helped that Kurama now understood the basics of the body flicker and could micromanage his chakra far easier than Naruto. It killed two birds with one stone, and Naruto spent the rest of the day trying to get faster. He got to the point where he could use a flicker on every step, which gave him far more angles to attack from. As night fell, Naruto made his way to the hospital. It had been a week since the attack, but Makoto was still bedridden. The doctor said that she was lucky that the stab had missed her spine, but it did cause major damage to her organs. It would probably take several weeks before she was back on her feet. Guilt had made Naruto even more withdrawn than normal. He was the target of the attack, he had managed to figure that out. If he hadn't been there, then Makoto wouldn't have been stabbed. A small part of his mind knew that it was a little foolish to think that, but he couldn't help it. This was his family and they had come under fire just from his existence. I need to get stronger. Stronger than anyone else, so that I can protect them. As he stepped past the front desk, Naruto heard his name called. Turning, Naruto saw the bespectacled face of Kabuto. Kabuto had taken the time to introduce himself to Sasuke and Naruto. Kabuto had studied medical jutsu and explained the things that the doctor refused to say, citing their youth as an excuse to keep the truth from them. Both Sasuke and Naruto appreciated being treated like an adult, they were no longer kids. Back from training, Naruto, how did it go? Asked Kabuto good-naturedly. Yes, I made a lot of progress today. If I can perfect it, I might end up the fastest person under the age of 20 in the village. That depends on Lee and whether or not he can go any faster than he has shown me. Well, my offer still stands. I may be a genin who has failed the Chunin exams 7 times, but I do know a few things. I can help you train if you want. Maybe show you some medical jutsu. The offer appealed to Naruto. It was definitely something that he was interested in learning. Thanks, Kabuto. Maybe next week. I have to see Mum now. Of course, replied Kabuto, stepping out of Naruto's way. Until next time, Naruto. As Naruto made his way to Makoto's room, he failed to see the predatory gleam of Kabuto's eyes as they followed Naruto's departure. Makoto stirred in her sleep before waking up. Opening her eyes, the only light source came from her bedside lamp. Makoto could see that night had truly fallen by the dark sky visible through her window. Glancing down, she could see the huddled form of Eri curled up on the bed with her. Makoto felt a mix of emotions for the poor girl. She had been forced to lose far too much in her short life. Eri had finally started to settle into Makoto's home and getting used to Sasuke and Naruto only for the attack to occur. It certainly didn't help that Makoto was getting rather attached to Eri. She had always wanted a daughter. Lying awkwardly on one of the room's chairs, Naruto was sleeping. He refused to sleep elsewhere. He didn't say so, but Makoto knew that Naruto feared another attack. While she wanted to comfort her adopted son, Makoto knew that he needed space at the moment. Naruto had never been one to talk about his feelings, the pit had taught him that it was a weakness. Still, Naruto and Sasuke were finally coming around to each other. They both had the goal of becoming strong and pushed each other harder than anything else. I hope they are both on the same squad. They need each other more than they realize. Considering that graduation is next week, I wonder who their sensei will be. Sakura wasn't quite sure what to think about her new sensei. She recognized him as someone who had been present when Naruto and Sasuke trained with that guy person, but she had never paid much attention to him. First impressions were not favorable as he was an hour late. She didn't know it, but she was lucky that it wasn't his usual 3. He then ordered them to the roof before asking them to share personal information. He had been very annoying when he essentially only told them his name, Kakashi Hatake. Sasuke's little speech had creeped Sakura out a little. He had said that although he liked training with Naruto, his ambition was to kill a certain man. What was that all about? Her attention was caught when Naruto started in his stage whisper, "You all know my name already. I like my family and friends. Ramen is the best food in the world. I dislike cages. My dream is to one day be so strong that I will be able to save the people I care about from dying." That was all Naruto said. He had noticed the way Kakashi had seemed to focus on Sasuke when he said he wanted to kill Itachi. Naruto decided that it would be smarter to keep his desire to burn Akari to ash to himself. Naruto dislikes cages, Sakura thought. What does he have against cages? Still, he is so cool, wanting to protect the people he cares about. It was Sakura's turn now. She took a moment to think before speaking. My name is Sakura Haruno. I like my family and, she suddenly blushed as she snuck a glance at both Naruto and Sasuke. Finding her voice, she continued, I dislike loud and obnoxious people. Squaring her shoulders, Sakura remembered Makoto's words and she spoke in a firmer tone, I don't really have a dream yet, but I want to be strong. I want people who see me to think, wow, I don't think I could beat her in a fight. I know that I'm the weak link here, but I promise to work hard so that I won't hold you back. Nodding in agreement, Kakashi stood and gave them their instructions about their real test that would be held the next day. The sun was high in the sky as Kakashi Hatake stood in the middle of Training Ground 7, waiting. The bell test had started roughly an hour ago and they still had an hour left, but he hadn't seen a hair on any of his charges' heads. With his senses, Kakashi was able to get an idea about their location. The three prospective genin had gathered and seemed to be planning an attack. That was fine with Kakashi, they clearly saw the real purpose behind the test, which was teamwork. Snapping shut the book that he hadn't really been reading, Kakashi began a slow walk towards his team. When they realized that he had started to move, Sasuke, Sakura and Naruto all leapt away and into position. After a minute of waiting, Sasuke burst through the trees and onto the training ground. Rushing Kakashi, he began a complicated series of moves in an attempt to secure one of the two bells attached to Kakashi's belt. Sasuke moves quite well for a genin. He really is talented. One of Sasuke's hands neared the bells and Kakashi focused on the movement, moving back slightly to thwart Sasuke's attempt. It was in that instant, with Kakashi's attention somewhat diverted, that Naruto struck. Using separately compressed chakra in both of his feet, his flicker was faster than normal and was enough to make Kakashi think about trying a little harder. Settling into his gentle strike, Naruto and Sasuke in combination attacked as one. With both boys on either side, Kakashi parried and dodged their attacks. He knew that he needed to gain some space and kicked Sasuke in the stomach in an effort to send him flying back a few meters. Even as Sasuke was flying backwards, he threw a kunai at Kakashi, but he had rushed his aim and Kakashi could see that it would be off course by a few inches. Turning his attention to Naruto, Kakashi blocked another punch before all of his senses screamed at him to dodge. Kakashi jumped away from the fight and saw Sakura standing right where Sasuke's thrown kunai had been a second before. She must have used a substitution with Sasuke's kunai to get in position. A good plan, it would have worked on a Chunin but not me. Still though, their teamwork is excellent. Though Sakura had failed to grasp the bells, she didn't lose heart and attacked again. With both Naruto and Sakura now attacking Kakashi side by side, he was better placed to defend. All of a sudden, Kakashi saw Sasuke with his peripheral vision launch a large fireball at all three of them. Kakashi was about to get angry at Sasuke for recklessly endangering his teammates when Naruto and Sakura seemed to lose all color before they lost their form and liquefied into oil. Understanding that this was the plan all along, he used a substitution with a nearby log to escape the fireball. Even before the smoke had cleared from Sasuke's attack, Naruto attacked with another flicker. Dodging away, Kakashi noticed that Naruto was now using a flicker with each foot and easily kept pace with Kakashi. He managed to get this far with the flicker. Only one more step then he will surpass Shisui. Dodging all over the training ground, Naruto was unable to land a hit on Kakashi but was able to stay near him due to all of his practice. Suddenly, Sasuke substituted himself with Naruto and attacked before Naruto used another flicker from Sasuke's previous location to get behind Kakashi, before Sakura subbed in for Naruto, after which, Naruto used another flicker to get on Kakashi's right flank. With three opponents pressing him, Kakashi went through several hand signs and disappeared into the ground. He briefly thought about making a shadow clone to fight them but ruled it out. Naruto's Byakugan would still see the original Kakashi underground and know something was up. He popped out of the ground several meters away and was immediately pounced on by Naruto. Kakashi, however, was ready and simply used an earth release, double suicide decapitation, vanishing back into the ground the instant Naruto used his flicker, reaching up in time and grabbing Naruto's ankle and dragging him into the earth, up to his neck. Naruto was now out of the fight. Creating a shadow clone, Kakashi turned his attention on Sasuke as his clone prepared to capture Sakura in a genjutsu. Even though Sasuke had become very cautious after seeing Naruto get trapped, he failed to stop Kakashi from tying him up with rope and leaving him hanging from a tree branch. Sasuke had no real idea how it happened and guessed that Kakashi had used his actual speed to catch him. Sakura had managed to break the genjutsu he had placed on her. Kakashi wasn't sure if it was on purpose or if she had flared her chakra in response to what he had shown her, but she was free now. Looking around, she saw Sasuke incapacitated and Naruto still buried up to his neck. Frowning, she turned and looked Kakashi in the eye, readying another kunai. She however had made a mistake and captured her in another genjutsu. This was far simpler than the previous one. He changed nothing about the world and she shouldn't notice the change in perception. In the genjutsu, Kakashi reached up and brought his mask down. An absolutely horrifying face was revealed, with rotting flesh and blood dripping down. This was so far out of the norm and terrifying that Sakura screamed in horror before passing out. Maybe I overdid that one. Oops. With all three of his students incapacitated, Kakashi called an end to the exercise and freed both Naruto and Sasuke. Waking Sakura up, he handed out some lunch to his new team. Good job guys. You all pass, said Kakashi with a smile. But sensei, we didn't get any bells, said Sakura in response. True, but there was a hidden meaning in this test. Can anyone tell me what it was? Sasuke frowned in thought before saying, is it how we work together? It seems to be the only thing we did that entire time. Yes Sasuke, it was about teamwork. Your squad will be the people you will have to rely on in battle. People that you can work with under any circumstance. You might not know this, but our village is a little different to the other hidden villages. They do use a squad-based system but focus on individual development. This gives the talented people time to shine, but the more average ninja flounder and often die in battle. Konoha instead emphasizes teamwork. At the start this may feel a little stifling for the more talented genin, but in time produces better ninja overall. Just look at the legendary three. Orochimaru and Tsunade are both very talented and outshone Jiraiya in their genin days. However, by working together, the three became far greater than they could ever achieve by themselves. Jiraiya worked hard and is now easily the equal to his squad mates. This wouldn't have happened in other villages. Orochimaru and Tsunade would have been given preferential treatment, but they all would have died when they fought Hanzo the Salamander. It was only through teamwork that Orochimaru, Tsunade and Jiraiya survived Hanzo, and he in turn named them the Legendary Three. Do you see what I mean? Kakashi's little speech had captured his team's attention. As all three nodded, Kakashi spoke again. It is also my intention to train you guys so hard that you will this generation's Legendary Three. Is that something you want? Although there was a slight apprehension from Sakura at the amount of work their sensei had promised, she nodded along with her team. That's good. In time Sakura will get past this petty fear of hard work and become truly fearsome. The boys hadn't said anything in response, but the determination in their gaze gave Kakashi all the answer he needed. Okay Team 7. You have a choice, take the rest of the day off or we can start training right now. Getting to his feet, Naruto simply stated that he wanted to train. Sasuke and Sakura followed suit. Grinning under his mask, Kakashi rubbed his hands together in anticipation for the torture he had planned. Sasuke watched his new team with a small frown. It wasn't directed at them though, it was at Kabuto. Kabuto had said that Naruto wished to learn a little bit of medical jutsu and Kakashi didn't have a problem with that. This had led to Sasuke's frown. Sakura apparently had great chakra control and also an aptitude for the medical arts. Kabuto had trained each of them, but Sakura was clearly the best out of the team. Kabuto had told Sasuke that although his chakra control was good, he lacked the patience required to accurately diagnose and treat injuries. He also apparently lacked the finesse needed to heal truly delicate things such as internal injuries. This frustration at his lack of talent for healing only compounded Sasuke's disappointment at his personal strength. I can't keep going at this slow pace. I will never catch up to Itachi at this rate. Disappointment wasn't the only thing on Sasuke's mind, however. There was a myriad of emotions swirling inside of him and Sasuke didn't know how to handle it. He still mourned the loss of his clan, but that was tempered by the return of his mother and, strangely enough, Naruto and Eri. Sasuke was worried about the attack and his mother's health, and even though Sasuke knew that it was childish, a small part of him resented Naruto's role in it. Not just the fact that they were there for him, but also the fact that Sasuke had rushed to help Naruto and ended up having to be saved. It was an accidental slap in the face, even if Naruto didn't know how it affected Sasuke. Turning his back on his team and his lack of medical talent, he made his way further out the training ground Team 7 was using. He started his usual exercise routine of push-ups and stomach crunches, but added to the overall workload. I need to find something I am truly good at. Something that neither Itachi or Naruto can do. Or for that matter, Sakura. Team 7 stood in the mission briefing room watching the Hokage decide their next mission. Looking at Kakashi, Hiruzen asked, "Kakashi, may I ask why you haven't pushed for AC rank mission for your team? They are clearly ready for it, what with all the training you are putting them through." "Sir, when we started missions, I gave them all a choice. We can get 3D ranks done in the morning followed by an entire afternoon training, or try and push for AC rank that would almost certainly turn out to be far more boring than they expected. All three of my genin want to push themselves further, and at this stage of their ninja career, they will get more use out of training than running around our border on patrol while nothing interesting happens." It was true, in general, even though C ranks were harder than D ranks, they weren't quite as exciting as most new genin believed. "Well, Kakashi," Hiruzen replied, "I am now giving your team AC rank. Asuma and Team 10 have just returned from their mission in Wave Country. I was given an interesting report. Apparently there is a new kind of drug being sold on the streets. I believe it's called AMP. The chemicals hit one's chakra network and gives it a massive boost. Asuma wasn't able to obtain a sample, but according to his report, he killed Zabuza, who had been hired by a man called Gato to kill his client, and once Zabuza's comrade witnessed it, he inhaled some AMP and attacked Asuma. Zabuza's comrade was, by Asuma's reckoning, at least Shunin level. However, after using AMP, Asuma's foe grew in strength and speed. Asuma said that it neared that of an experienced Jonin, but his enemy wasn't used to that kind of speed and Asuma was able to cut him down easily. So, as you can see, news of this AMP is quite disturbing, but we don't know enough about it. I dispatched someone to Wave to try and locate the source. However, Team 7's mission is to journey to several small villages located throughout Fire Country and see if the drug is being sold in our country and if it is confiscated so that our people can look at it. I have already sent Guy and his team to search the villages in the northern part of our country. Kurenai and Team 8 are currently in the east. You can pick between west and south. The next available genin team will take the remaining option." Sasuke wanted south while Naruto opted for west. After an intense look, both boys blurred into motion. Iruka, who was also present, almost reacted but saw that neither Kakashi or the Hokage had moved. Iruka then saw, to his relief, that both boys had finished a round of rock paper scissors with Sasuke winning via scissors. Kakashi then spoke up, "Okay Team 7, looks like we are going south. We're departing the village in 4 hours. We will meet at the southern gate. Pack for about a week or so. This shouldn't take long." Kakashi was restless. The mission had so far been just as boring as he imagined. Why couldn't I have just been allowed to train them in the village? As they walked through the forest near the next village, Kakashi looked around. Something wasn't right. After thinking about it, he realized what it was. The sounds of the forest had stopped. No birds chirped, no rustle in the bushes, no buzzing of insects, nothing. "Team, something dangerous has spooked the local wildlife and the animals are either lying low or have moved on. Be on guard, just in case." At his words, Team 7 gripped some kunai and turned their gazes outward. After a few short minutes, the next village came into view. Walking into it, Kakashi saw several pairs of eyes watching fearfully from inside their homes, only to hastily vanish behind curtains when he made eye contact. Stopping in what could be considered the village square, Team 7 looked around before Kakashi knocked on the door of the nearest house. "Hello. We are ninjas from Konoha. We are looking for whoever may be in charge of this village." Kakashi heard a relieved gasp from the other side of the door before it opened to reveal a man with an extremely large nose. Konoha ninja, are you here to kill the monsters? What monsters? Do you have a village headsman or something similar? Oh right. Follow me. A man led Team 7 across the square to plain wooden house with a bright green door. Gone. Konoha ninja are here to save us. After a brief pause, the door flew open to reveal the man named Gon. Unlike the other villager, Gon had a rather small, button nose, though he did have an impressive number of freckles. Is this true? You will help us. Thank you so much. Calm down, Kakashi said in a calm tone. Explain what has happened. Gon launched into his explanation. He told Team 7 about how for the last month, people were getting attacked. There was no method or pattern, just that on random nights, people happened to get attacked. That the next morning the only thing villagers found were half-eaten remains. Kakashi asked Gon to lead Team 7 to the site of the latest attack. Apparently it had occurred during the night. The remaining villagers had yet to draw straws about who had to clean up the bloody corpse. Apparently, there was a superstition going around that whoever cleaned up the bodies were next attacked. Gon refused to enter the house, but Kakashi paused before going in alone. I know they will need to see death someday, but if I can prolong that, I will. I was far too young to find my father's body. I will keep their innocence intact as long as I can. Kakashi chose to forget that both Sasuke and Naruto were far too familiar with death. Team 7 stayed on guard while they waited for their sensei to leave the house. Roughly 10 minutes later, Kakashi stepped back out into the street and looked to be holding a small bit of cloth. He explained that it was blood taken from underneath the fingernails of the body inside. It was likely that this belonged to the monster. Before committing to anything though, Kakashi turned to his team and asked, "All right team, it's your choice. Do we help them or continue on our mission?" After a brief pause, all three agreed to help. Blatantly ignoring Gon, who happened to be thanking them while in the middle of a bow, Kakashi summoned Pakun and gave him the small cloth that smelled of the blood of one of the monsters. Giving it a sniff, Pakun led Team 7 out of the village into the surrounding woods. After several hours, the nin dog stopped. The trail goes cold here. I can't smell any more blood in the area around us. Not even in the trees. End of the line for me. With that said, Pakun dispelled himself in a puff of smoke. Well, they either started flying or went underground. Kakashi thought. Turning to his team, he said, Naruto, use your Byakugan. What can you see underneath us? Naruto did so and was puzzled. Almost the entire ground looked normal, but there were strange pockets of air here and there. It appeared random, but they were grouped a little too closely to be a coincidence. It was almost like looking through a window that was splattered in mud. After Naruto relayed the information, Kakashi started looking around for some kind of clue. After a few minutes of silent searching, he found it. A small lever located inside a hollow tree. Pulling the lever, a metal slab was lowered down on one hinge, leading to a stairway. It didn't look very inviting. Okay guys, diamond formation with me at the rear. Naruto on point with Sasuke on the right and Sakura on the left. Keep your eyes peeled, and if you even think you saw something, tell me straight away. Kakashi thought, I would prefer to lead, but watching the rear of a squad is the most dangerous spot, and even though Naruto has the Byakugan, I don't want to place Naruto there. Since I have to watch our backs, Naruto is the clear choice to lead. He's stronger than the other two. Slowly making their way down, the team entered a dimly lit corridor. Cheap lights were attached to the left wall every few meters. They did little to lift the gloom in the wide corridor. Kakashi guessed that it was around 5 meters wide and 3 meters high. A steel door with a small window was a few meters ahead and to their right. Kakashi asked Naruto to try and scout it out, but apparently whatever blocked his vision was happening here too. That something was able to stop the Byakugan alarmed Kakashi, and a part of him wanted to leave the corridor. He didn't want to place his team in unnecessary danger, but he also knew that the boys wouldn't stand for it. Giving his orders, Team 7 slowly advanced down the corridor before Kakashi noticed it. It was a trip wire. He called out, but it was too late. Naruto stepped right on it. The effect was instant. The door in front of them burst open and 8 figures rushed out. They didn't pause, ask questions or demand answers, the figures just attacked. Naruto answered with a burst of flame that spanned the entire corridor. 7 figures, however, jumped through the flame with minimal difficulty. 4 of them immediately attacked Kakashi, which left his students with a foe each. A swift lightning blade quickly took care of 2 of his assailants. One of the figures sprouted tusks from his lower jaw and his skin turned a dark green. Moving with an even greater speed, the tusked figure managed to piece Kakashi's left forearm, which he had raised in defense. It's some kind of transformation. It gives them much more power. Is this the result of AMP? He quickly tried to stab the tusked man with his kunai, but they jumped away. Using the opportunity, Kakashi raised his forehead protector, revealing his Sharingan. Suddenly, the last of Kakashi's original attackers burst from the ground underneath him, trying to stab him with a short sword. This one was covered in strange black marks that appeared to crawl over his skin. As Kakashi dodged the stab, a grunt of pain from Sasuke sounded. This forced Kakashi to create a shadow clone which would be able to help his team. I hope it lasts a while. I don't have the chakra to spare for shadow clones right now. The figure with the sword emerged from the ground fully, her skin turning a dark gray and her incisors growing by 6 centimeters. The 2 figures attacked at the same time and Kakashi managed to hold them off, but the narrow space stopped him from getting too creative. The proximity of his team also prevented him from using his more destructive jutsus. Both figures reached into their pockets and took out a small packet. Is that AMP? I thought they were already on it. Are they going to get even stronger? Kakashi wanted nothing more than to end the fight quickly, but knew from experience that he would have to wait for his opportunity. As soon as the figures had emerged, Sasuke knew they had trouble. When Naruto's attack didn't seem to do anything, sweat began to form on his brow. As his foe attacked, Sasuke turned his Sharingan on. Even though it was incomplete, it still allowed him to predict his foe's movements. Sasuke slowly gained some confidence and instead of focusing on defense he began attacking. He overextended on one punch and received a painful kick to his ribs just as he lost his balance. A grunt of pain escaped his lips and Sasuke backed away, trying to gain some space. It wasn't enough though, and his foe flew through several hand signs before fire release, blazing ball, and a fireball formed. In mid-flight however, it started spinning and got a lot faster. It also turned slightly, following Sasuke. Even with his Sharingan, the increased speed threw his timing off and Sasuke knew he wouldn't be able to dodge it. Sasuke crossed his arms in front of his face in preparation, but Kakashi's shadow clone had raised a large earthen wall in front of Sasuke to protect him. It was in that instant, when Sasuke, Kakashi and his clone were cut off from the rest of the corridor by the wall that the clone had raised, that it happened. Sakura's shrill scream echoed in the space, but it started going further down the corridor. She was being taken away from the team. Cursing, the clone lowered the wall but was set on by enemy reinforcements. 4 more foes had appeared and 3 attacked the clone. The clone was pushed to its limits. It had to focus on defense since just one hit would end it, and it knew Kakashi couldn't afford another clone, especially since they were facing an unknown number of enemies. For his part, Sasuke tangled with his new foe. Sasuke found himself grabbed and thrown through the doorway where the original 8 attackers had come from. Throwing a kunai at the doorway as he flew in the air, Sasuke glanced around looking for an advantage. On the wall was a weapons rack that held a katana. Firing a fireball at the doorway after he returned to his feet, Sasuke made a beeline for the sword. He felt his fingers brush the hilt before he was jerked backwards by his shirt's collar. He was slammed into a wooden barrel. The barrel broke and Sasuke found himself laying on hundreds of small packets of purple powder. Is this AMP? I can't beat this guy. If I die here, I can't fight Itachi. That thought propelled Sasuke to grab a packet and snort some powder. Sasuke was hit by a sudden burst of euphoria and strength flowed through his veins. Fighting now seemed so trivial to him. His new opponent, who had been too fast to track, now appeared to be moving in slow motion. Sasuke dodged to his left and ran across the room to grab the katana. I'm at least 8 times faster than before. I feel so strong. Holding the katana in his hands just seemed right to Sasuke. It was almost as if his arms were finally complete. His newfound confidence grew even more with the sword and he quickly used his newfound speed to slice his foe across the stomach. Reversing his grip, Sasuke stabbed backwards and pieced the enemy's heart. Looking at the sword in his hands, Sasuke thought, I've found it, the thing I'm good at. Sasuke started walking towards the door to rejoin his team but stopped when he caught sight of the smashed barrel. He stared at the packets of amp silently. After several moments, he pocketed several packs before he walked out of the room. Naruto heard Sakura's scream and his anger grew. His opponent had grown horns and was a lot tougher than at the start of the fight. Using his anger as fuel, Naruto channeled Kurama's fire in his right hand, wind in his left and oil in his gut. Expelling all three at the same time produced the hottest attack Naruto had ever made. The flames burned white and his opponent was incinerated instantly. He deliberately undershot his attack, not knowing how far away Sakura was. As the flames died down, Naruto saw that the sheer intensity of his attack had etched his foe's shadow into the stone floor. The air in the corridor had become almost unbearably hot and everyone in it broke out into fevered sweating. Naruto glanced back at his team. Kakashi was still busy and Sasuke had just been thrown into the room behind him. I have to trust that they can handle themselves. Sakura was overpowered, she needs help. Naruto began running after Sakura. He knew it was dumb but Sakura was his friend. She had been so weak and annoying in the beginning but she had really stepped up her game and Naruto could respect that. So, he ran after her against his better judgment. Naruto, I know I won't be able to stop you so just listen. You are running into unknown territory and somehow your Byakugan is blocked. Your ability to sense chakra however still works. Focus on Sakura's and you might be able to find her without searching blindly. Kurama said, his tone tense. Naruto forced himself to stop and focus. He wasn't very good at sensing, he had neglected it thinking that his Byakugan wouldn't let him down. I can't sense anything. How could I be so stupid to not practice my sensing? Loud footsteps sounded behind and spinning around, Naruto saw a massive bulldog. It had black fur and was dressed just like Pakun, a blue vest and leaf headband tied to his left leg. A spiked collar glinted in the light. It spoke in a deep, gravelly tone. Come, I'm one of Kakashi's nin dogs, my name is Bull. I can lead you to Sakura. Kakashi picked me since I am his primary fighting summon. Nodding, Naruto gestured for Bull to take the lead. Just hang on Sakura, I'm coming. Bull and Naruto charged forward but after a few minutes, the corridor opened up into a large room. A large bulb hung from the ceiling but that was the only light source. The outer walls covered in shadows. Another enemy attacked but Bull and Naruto took him down quickly. Bull lowered his nose to the ground before grunting and setting off once again. Following Bull through a different doorway, Naruto prayed that he would make it in time. Rounding a left turn, Naruto could suddenly hear Sakura's muffled screaming. She was close now. Taking a right turn, the muffled screaming suddenly stopped. There was a wooden door in front of them. Bull didn't stop. Picking up his pace, he slammed his shoulder into the door with all his might, the door splintering into pieces. Naruto was hot on his heels. Turning his gaze rapidly, he first saw the body of a man face down, blood pooling on the floor. In the corner furthest away from the body sat Sakura, hunched over, knees brought up to her chest and cradling her left arm to her body. She was shaking silently, head resting on her knees. Sakura, it's Naruto. What happened? Naruto slowly approached Sakura, holding his hands up. He didn't know what had happened to her but knew that he shouldn't do anything that might upset her. Recognizing the sound of Naruto's whisper, Sakura raised her head. Tears fall thick and fast but she didn't say a word. Kneeling on the floor a couple of meters away from her, Naruto asked, "Are you hurt? Do you need first aid?" Mutely, Sakura simply extended her left arm for Naruto to see. Naruto couldn't suppress a hiss. Her arm had been partially eaten. 3 bite marks right next to each other formed the largest wound on the outside of her forearm. A large chunk of flesh had been chewed off and bone was actually visible through that wound. On the inside of her wrist, another chunk of flesh was missing. Her left pinky had been severed unevenly by human teeth. Sakura began speaking in a monotone, her eyes dull. I managed to stop the bleeding. He wouldn't stop Naruto. He ate my arm. He ate a part of me Naruto. Her eyes were losing their dullness. Naruto could see some of the panic she must have felt. Her voice started to shake and rise in pitch. I had to use my arm to protect my face. I fought as hard as I could but it didn't matter. He just wouldn't stop. Sakura had lurched to her knees, becoming hysterical. I stabbed him but it didn't work. He pinned me down and kept eating. I kept stabbing him over and over again but nothing worked. He was going to eat me. Naruto hugged Sakura and she stopped speaking, crying into his chest. Naruto was horrified but he had to stay strong for Sakura. Turning his head, Naruto saw Bull standing guard at the door. Trusting in the nin dog, Naruto stayed put, softly stroking her hair and letting Sakura get it all out. Hiruzen Sarutobi stood on the balcony of his office. It gave people one of the best views of the village. Hiruzen was the picture of calm, watching the day go by while having a pleasant smoke. Hiruzen's thoughts, however, were anything but calm. He thought back to the mission report he had gotten from Kakashi. This news about a strange transformation is disturbing. The lab said that AMP couldn't give a user a transformation of any kind. It was just a chakra steroid. Kakashi was so lucky that he didn't lose any of his team. He would crumble and probably request to resign as a sensei. I hope he doesn't take this too hard. From what Ryo said, the Stone and Cloud Daimyo control the black market. Is this a new way for the real rulers to exercise control over the people? Hiruzen was tempted to just assume that to be the case, but just this morning he had gotten information that cast doubt on that theory. Even though they had been the genin team that Hiruzen had sent out first, Guy's team was the last to return from their mission to search for traces of AMP. Guy had taken it upon himself to not only search the villages assigned to him, but every village located in the northern parts of Fire Country. It had taken them an extra week to return. When they had, Hiruzen had gotten Guy's mission report. At a village just off the border, they had run into a genin team from Grass. Though the Grass had been friendly at first, things had turned sour when they realized Guy was searching for AMP. A fight had ensued and one Grass genin had been captured. The captive genin was apparently linked quite heavily with the new drug. Something about a unique aspect of her chakra. She had been brought back to Konoha for questioning. Her name turned out to be Karen Uzumaki and she wanted nothing more than to remain in Konoha. Word had spread like wildfire across the nations about the return of a boy named Naruto Uzumaki, son of the fourth Hokage. Karen had heard Naruto's name and wanted to meet the only other Uzumaki she had heard of. Hiruzen knew that he would have to hold a full debrief with the girl at a later date, but the small amount of information that she gave turned out to be quite interesting. When the fight had broke out, Karen had put up only a token resistance fighting 10-10. Karen said that her village was jealous of the great nations and desired to be seen as their equal. Karen's blood was a vital part of AMP. Apparently her bloodline gave the drug the kick to buff the chakra system. What cast doubt on his theory about the daimyo being behind it was when Karen told him about Grass forming an alliance with the new village Sound. Karen thought that Sound would probably want the same as Grass, but she wasn't sure. The only thing she was sure about was that Sound was behind the creation of AMP. Karen was sure since she had been taken to secret facility in Sound and had her blood drawn. Is Stone secretly bankrolling Grass and Sound? He can't take direct action, so he strikes from the shadows. Or does Sound have its own agenda? I wish we had more information on them, but Sound is rather secretive. If Sound does have its own plans, it means that I will have to keep an eye on their genin when we hold the Chunin exams later this year. Too much was happening, too quickly. Hiruzen wanted nothing more than a foe in front of him that he could fight. Having kept his village as far from the political scene as he could in the past, Hiruzen lacked the experience fighting on this vastly different but very real battlefield. Softly spoken words could deal more damage than a kunai. Hiruzen ordered one of his Anbu to bring Danzo to see him. Danzo may wish my death, but he also protects the village. Is it worth telling him about this organization that secretly controls everything? It's always risky giving Danzo information. I will also have to keep Karen out of his hands. Her bloodline already makes her a target, but if Naruto befriends his newfound family member, Danzo will gain a lot of leverage over Naruto. Naruto was used to silence, but the silence that had settled in Training Ground 7 was deafening. His whole team was sitting in the shade of the trees. Everyone had pensive expressions, but no one wanted to speak first. Another minute passed when Kakashi coughed slightly, before clearing his throat. Guys, I just want to say I'm sorry. I should have gone with my instincts and not lead you down those stairs. If you wish to transfer to another sensei, I understand and won't hold it against you. Naruto glanced at Sasuke. Sasuke wore a frown, but it didn't look like it was in response to what Kakashi had said. It also seemed like Sasuke was in no hurry to speak. Looking to his left, Naruto saw that Sakura was biting her lip and looking at the ground. She glanced at her left arm, covered in bandages, before looking back at the ground. Sakura didn't appear to be in any hurry to talk either. So, Naruto looked up and began in his stage whisper. I'm good, Kakashi. It was something that none of us could see coming. I want to stay on the team, I don't blame you. Relief showed in Kakashi's eye. Nodding gratefully at Naruto, Kakashi lapsed back into silence. Another few minutes passed before Sasuke spoke up. I'll stay too. You can help me with the Sharingan and you are one of the strongest fighters in the village. I would like some instruction in swordsmanship though. Again, Kakashi nodded gratefully. Almost as if Sakura couldn't bear the others waiting for her to talk, she began in a soft voice. I don't know if I want to be a ninja anymore. That one statement seemed to suck all the air from the training ground. Since Sakura was looking at the ground, she missed the reaction to her words as she continued. That was the worst experience of my life. I was being eaten. She paused, rubbing her left forearm subconsciously. I've been disfigured. I have nightmares. I killed someone and now I'm just some kind of freak. The other members of Team 7 looked at each other, hoping that someone else would respond first. Finally, Kakashi took it upon himself. Sakura, I can't say I understand. I've never been eaten. However, I have more experience than anyone else here about killing. You are not a freak. You are just another ninja who was stuck in a horrible situation. I don't think anyone here thinks any worse of you than they did before. Sasuke said that he actually thought Sakura was much better than she was at the start of the year. Naruto gathered his thoughts for a minute before he spoke. Sakura, if you are a freak, then I am too. I wasn't eaten but I was blinded and now carry the eyes of two people I consider my family. The scars on my face are the first thing people notice about me. You killed someone who was eating you but you still feel a little bad about it. You are a better person than me. I have killed, well, I don't remember the exact number but I don't regret it like you. So, if you are a freak then what does that make me? A monster. A demon. You are a better person than me, Sakura. I won't stop you if you want to quit, but listen. Every morning I wake up and see my scars in the mirror. I use my scars to remind me of my promise. A promise to become strong, strong enough to save my family and friends from death. Slightly stunned quiet followed Naruto's words. That was definitely the most he had ever said in one go. Sakura's eyes had widened as she listened to Naruto and her jaw had fallen open in shock. 2 days had passed since their mission and everyone Sakura had spoken treated her like she was made out of china. That Naruto hadn't changed the way he treated Sakura meant more to her than she realized. Sakura sat in deep thought for a long time, long enough for the shadows of the trees to change position, but no one on Team 7 minded. They would give Sakura as much time as she needed. Something to drive me. Well, all I know is that I never want something like that to happen to me again. I will become strong enough so that I won't ever feel powerless again. Sakura's eyes shone with her newfound determination. She didn't say her thoughts, all she said was, thanks Naruto. Let's get back to training. Ino was concerned for her teammate, Shikamaru. Ever since they had returned from their mission from Wave, Shikamaru had changed. Sure, Ino hadn't heard exactly what Haku had said to him on the bridge, but it couldn't be that important, right? Ino had been just as scared as Shikamaru when it looked like Choji had died, but it seemed as though a fire had been lit inside of Shikamaru. He had thrown himself into training with a determination that surprised even Shikamaru's father. Ino didn't ask Shikamaru about his change. Partly out of fear that she would be just as affected and partly because she was concerned that she might somehow revert Shikamaru back to being lazy. Say what you want, but this new Shikamaru was a lot better when it came to being in a team. Ino was supposed to be working the counter of her family's flower shop, but she was far too busy being preoccupied with her own thoughts to worry about mundane things like the store. The bell on the store's door rang as it opened and Hinata Hyuga entered. Ino snapped back to reality, This was an opportunity to gossip. Hi Hinata. Have you seen Sakura? Did she tell you what happened to her? She wouldn't tell me, no matter what I said. Hinata had barely taken 5 steps into the store before she was subjected to Ino's interrogation. Hello Ino. No, I haven't seen Sakura. All I know is that Naruto's team got back from a really dangerous mission. Ino knew that Hinata had a crush on Naruto, but she was hoping that Hinata would have more information than that. Ah, that sucks. Well, have you seen Shikamaru? He's changed so much since our last mission. I saw him yesterday. Shikamaru seemed fine to me. He was training. Oh. Why was he training? Ino grinned. This was what she wanted. Someone to bounce ideas off of and to vent. Hinata watched Ino take a deep breath and couldn't help but feel a slight sense of foreboding. Sakura's newfound resolve changed Team 7 in different ways. Kakashi was more determined than ever to turn his team into a truly terrifying force of nature. Naruto had always thrown himself into his training, but now he made sure to include Sakura in her quest. Sasuke saw a potential rival form before his eyes and vowed to surpass Naruto before his female teammate. Sasuke was satisfied for the moment, however. Kakashi had introduced him to a special jonin named Hayate Gecko. The man turned out to be a highly skilled swordsman who quickly realized Sasuke's natural talent with a sword. Hayate's constant coughing did little to lower Sasuke's opinion of the man when he started teaching Sasuke the hidden techniques unique to Konoha. Hayate had been very impressed with Sasuke's sheer aptitude for the sword and focused on improving Sasuke's speed so that he could produce afterimages. In time, Hayate would teach Sasuke the dance of the crescent moon, his signature technique. For his part, Sasuke was nursing a near-constant headache. After the amp had worn off, Sasuke suffered from head pain. I guess this is why mother said drugs were so dangerous. Sasuke wasn't a fool. He quickly realized that his body wanted to return to the state of euphoria that it had felt, but that was dangerous. He quickly asked his mother about drugs and saw the possibility of getting addicted to amp. 2 problems with that though. 1. I don't want to turn into some monster that eats people. 2. I only have 4 packets. I have to save at least 1 for my fight with Itachi. Preferably 2. That only gives me 2 more shots to use and I can't squander them, no matter how much I want to. The damage from the bites had severe consequences for Sakura. She couldn't form several hand signs correctly and her left-handed grip was a lot weaker than before. Kakashi was initially stumped before he asked Guy to help train Sakura. Guy would be able to transform Sakura into someone scary. However, her first order of business was to give herself a haircut. Back then, her long hair had been yanked, forcing her head back before being struck in the face. That wasn't going to happen again. Her new hair was short, barely reaching her earlobes. Kabuto had also pointed out that Sakura still possessed the ability to use the medical scalpel and thus Sakura's training became clear. Guy would turn Sakura into a speed and kicking demon while Kabuto would help refine Sakura's healing while showing her how to use medical jutsu offensively. The sheer amount of physical training that Guy put her through surprised her, but Sakura didn't say a single word of protest. I need this. For his part, Naruto practiced with Kurenai to improve his sensing abilities. He hadn't forgotten how useless he would have been had Kakashi not summoned Bull. Team 8 took Naruto's occasional participation in their stride. It actually felt good. Naruto had been the strongest of their class by a wide margin, but he needed help from their sensei. While he had the attention of Kurenai, Naruto also practiced his genjutsu. It was his weakest skill, but Naruto wasn't going to neglect aspects of his training anymore. Was another day with Naruto sitting in training ground 8 trying to locate the positions of Team 8 by sense alone. He suddenly sensed Guy and someone he hadn't sensed before approaching from the village. Getting to his feet, Naruto turned to greet Guy and his companion. The person with Guy turned out to be a girl. She had red hair, the left side appeared to be smooth while her right was slightly spiky. Red eyes had locked on Naruto's face. She wore brown glasses and appeared to be Naruto's height. She wore a tan shirt and a purple skirt. Naruto. Greet Guy, it's a pleasant day for training, is it not? I have someone here that would like to meet you. Guy gestured to the girl, encouraging her to speak. She appeared nervous but managed to find her voice. Hello. I'm Karen. I think we are family. I've wanted to meet you ever since I heard your name. Naruto was surprised. He wasn't so surprised that he failed to sense Team 8 enter the training grounds, it seemed as though they realized the exercise was over. Naruto replied with his customary whisper, "What makes you think we are family? I can't remember ever meeting you before." If Karen found the whispering odd, she didn't show it. "Oh, sorry Naruto. Can I call you Naruto? My full name is Karen Uzumaki. We are members of the same clan." A strange warmth settled in Naruto's chest, but he couldn't identify what it was. An Uzumaki? Is it possible? Karen has red hair like mother. Kiba gasped. Team 8 was out of normal hearing range, but with his Inuzuka senses, he heard what Karen had said. Lacking any kind of concern for Naruto's privacy, he immediately repeated what he had said to his team and sensei. He was then promptly thumped on his head by Kurenai for his lack of tact. "You can call me Naruto," Naruto replied to Karen's question. "Is there a way to prove that you are an Uzumaki? I just don't want to welcome someone from my clan if it turns out to be false." Karen's eyes dimmed slightly. Naruto wasn't being mean, but it seemed like he wasn't really excited. Karen had been so excited when she heard that another Uzumaki lived. Her mother had died just last year, and Karen was convinced that she was the last member of their once great clan. Well, I don't anything I can do to prove it now. We could go to the hospital and get a blood test done. All I can say is that my mum was an Uzumaki and she filled my head with her stories of Uzo. Karen had started off very nervous, but Naruto's seeming indifference was grating her nerves and her temper was rising. Naruto was oblivious though as replied, "That's a good idea. Can we go right now? It would be nice to get this done soon." Can't Naruto even crack a smile? Appear to be happy to see another Uzumaki. Karen knew that she had a fierce temper. She tried to contain it, she wanted to make a good impression on Naruto, but it was no use. "You could at least pretend to be happy to have a new clan member," she said in a loud, angry voice. "I came all this way to meet you. I finally find another family member, but you don't seem to care." It took a lot of effort to not hit Naruto, but Karen managed. She just couldn't understand why Naruto seemed so indifferent. Naruto blinked at Karen's outburst. He hadn't intended to cause offense. Now his newfound family was angry at him. Naruto gave a short, stiff bow before apologizing. "Karen, it was not my intent to annoy or anger you. I know I can appear cold, but I really am happy to meet you. I'll have to tell you all about it someday." Karen was suddenly all smiles. She was glad that Naruto had said that, and she happily walked with Naruto towards the hospital, chattering away her anger forgotten. As Guy and Team 8 watched the Uzumakis depart, Guy turned to Kurenai and said, "Well, her personality is just like Kushina, so I believe Karen is who she says she is." Neji Hyuga fell to his knees exhausted. Not even Guy managed to make training quite as tough as this, but Danzo Shimura was a hard taskmaster. Neji had found the cryptic note underneath his pillow a few weeks ago, and Neji hadn't looked back since. Danzo had explained that he was looking for ways to neutralize the caged bird seal and that he could turn Neji into the greatest Hyuga in history. Danzo then focused on teaching Neji other aspects to being a ninja and not have him focus on just the gentle fist. It turned out that Neji had 3 nature affinities, and Danzo had instructed Neji in several jutsu in each nature. As soon as Danzo disables the caged bird seal, I will abandon root. I will use Danzo for my own ends. Neji had no idea that he was playing into Danzo's hands. Neji desired freedom to change his destiny. Even if Neji happened to be a genius when it came to using his Byakugan and training, but he had never had to deal with the level of manipulation that Danzo was capable of. Neji would willingly follow the bait that was his freedom all the way into root and the shadows that came with it. Kakashi didn't normally drink. He personally didn't see the appeal, but this was an exception. He had led his team into danger and nearly lost Sakura. He managed to keep a straight face around his team, but Kakashi was going through a particularly tough time. Memories of his failures flared up and guilt overtook him. Kakashi knew that he should go talk to Inoichi, but Kakashi really didn't feel like it. The burning of alcohol was, at the moment, far more preferable. Asuma suddenly sat on the stool next to Kakashi and signaled the bartender for his usual. The 2 men drank in silence before Asuma spoke. "Kakashi, I'm going to say this once. This is your first genin team. They are going to find danger, it's gonna happen. I have trained 2 teams from genin to chunin and it never gets any easier. It's the life of being a ninja, we all could die at any time, even genin. You know this. So, man up, stop moping and go train your team instead of foisting them off on other teachers. Kakashi was shocked. Asuma had never spoken to him like that before. Kakashi was sorely tempted to revert back to his old ways of bottling himself up, but Kakashi had come to enjoy life as it was now and he took Asuma's words to heart. Yeah, you're right, Asuma. It's a rookie mistake and I appreciate you calling me out on it. You know, Kakashi, you're not the only sensei this village has. If you need anything, we'd all be very happy to help you even if it's just someone to chat to. Kakashi appreciated his friend for being so blunt and excused himself. Kakashi knew that Asuma was right. Kakashi did need to practice being more open with his friends. He needed to accept that he wouldn't be there to protect his genin team forever, that in their line of work danger was just something that was always underlying. His genin team knew the perils and accepted to be ninja. Kakashi felt the difference his talk with Asuma had made had he hurried home. He had a new and rather brutal training session to plan for his team.